Welcome, revelers. This is RVL, right versus left. The left is evil. I'm Rob B. And with me, as always.
And I'm Brad Lee.
And I'm Brian G.
And we're here. We're talking about the things that the left is trying to do in this country. We want to make sure that everything's out there and you get a perspective from normal people. So we can make sure that everybody sees that the left is evil.
Evil.
All right, so welcome. Today we're going to talk about something that actually impacts every single American, and that is the national debt. So, Brian, you wanted to talk about this. So, well, first of all, Brad and Brian, how are you guys doing today?
Outstanding. This is a subject I am, well, let's just say like Alex Jones would say, I'm a little retarded.
All right, well, let's see if we can unretard you and some of our listeners. Brian, how are you?
I'm good, a little tired, but yeah, this is a subject we've talked about so much, but as of lately, we've really ignored.
Oh,
yeah, there's not a whole lot of talk about it nowadays, is there?
No, a few years ago, that's what you talked about every day, pretty much, and now you haven't heard about it for a couple of years at least.
Okay, so get into it, Brian. This is your topic.
Well, it would, of course, as everybody would know, it would be national debt, which is now at over $31 trillion that the U.S. owes back. So basically, the U.S. decides that it wants to spend more money than it's bringing in by $31 trillion. So it's building up a debt that eventually we're going to have to pay back, which it's still going up. So it looks like the current administration has decided to send it into the future for, our children to pay back.
Right. So how much, what's the national debt at?
31 trillion, 130 billion, 311 million and change.
It's going up like 500,000 every freaking second, or 100,000 every second.
Now, what I think
pretty darn close.
Kind of fascinating about that is the fact that it is constantly going up. A big part of our problem is the removal of the brakes, the getting rid of the debt ceiling.
Yeah, no kidding.
So it's interesting how the U.S. government handles our national debt. Because, like, if you max out your credit cards, you don't get to borrow anymore until you pay down your debts. But the way the U.S. government does, they just take out another credit card.
Every few sequence.
Well, I guess we're not really in control of the printing of money, but I guess we kind of are. It's how we control the Fed in some way or another. Yeah.
We control the politicians who keep ignoring our debt crisis. And I'd say it's at a point of a crisis. Like, I mean, that's my part.
Rob, it's been at a point of a crisis for, 20 years now?
And yet it still keeps getting higher. So,
yes.
So the highest level our national debt was, if you adjust it for inflation, was obviously during World War II. And then it was paid down, like that was the equivalent of, like as a statement to GDP, it was over 100% of our GDP. But that was during a massive world war.
Yeah, I was going to say a world war. That's the one time that you can actually see a national debt being applied would be during a massive conflict like that, a world war where you're trying to save the world. And then, but as soon as the war's over, then you adjust and start paying that down.
So when COVID hit, we jumped back up to almost 100% of our GDP.
Yeah.
So now, what's the GDP right now? It's
Negative 8.3.
Hmm.
Or am I thinking of a wrong number?
I think that's GDP annualized contraction. You're talking the percentage. I'm thinking the actual. Yeah. So we're at 19 trillion for our gross domestic product, which means we're almost to double our GDP. So the highest level of debt we've ever had.
Yeah.
19.90 trillion.
Yeah. And that's not counting all these unpaid for programs that the way the bills are written, they're going to cost us way more than they said they're going to.
So how do they figure we're not in a recession?
Oh, we've been in a recession for a while now.
Oh, I know that, but I just don't, because it says according to the general definition, 2 consecutive quarters of negative gross domestic product is considered a recession.
Well,
but you go down.
That
was from let's see, who was that from? Forbes. Okay, and then you go down to equitablegrowth.org, and it says the short answer is that's hard to say. While the 2-quarter rule would indicate that it is, there has also never been a recession declared.
Yeah, and so I'm sorry, the declaration of a recession does not determine recession.
No, who would declare it anyways? The president? Of course he's not going to declare it.
Well, this president wouldn't.
No, because he's fucking dumber than the last 2.
I think he's pushing a record for closest IQ to shoe size ratio.
I mean, we're worse off than we were back when Jimmy Carter was a president.
Yep. Yeah, by far.
Man, I never thought I would say that we had a worse president than Jimmy Carter, but Biden's gone way beyond that. I mean, Obama was right there, but Biden is just horrible.
Oh man, I was in Walmart and they had the earpods locked up, and I was trying to get some. He was like, "Oh, sorry, I was busy." I'm like, "That's okay." I was like, "We don't want any thieves increasing the inflation." It's not as bad as when Carter was in. And I was like, "Give it a few months." I'm like, "How long did Carter have? 4 years?" Yeah, this guy's been in office a year and a half, because this was like back in February.
Right.
So
back in February, that would be only a year.
I know I was hilarious. I was like, dude, what? It's not even 2 years into his freaking presidency, and we're already this bad.
Well, I definitely don't think any debate can be made about how horrible our president is. So the issue with the national debt is the actual ability to service it, even if you take if you were to do like a flat tax of 20%, which would actually be really high on a flat tax.
Yeah. Really high.
Oh, actually, I'll just search this real quick. How much tax revenues were? (2021) tax revenues.
Well, isn't that in the freaking debtclock.org?
I'm not on the site you guys are on. Well, if it's there, tell me.
U.S. federal tax revenue is going down from 4,895,206,626,000.
You can round that.
908,765,4,3,2,1,000. Yeah,
because when recession happens, that also reduces the tax revenues. And when the stock market collapses, you lose all of those capital gains taxes. So in 2021, the U.S. government collected $4 trillion. So if the U.S. government spent no money whatsoever and just paid down the debt with all the tax revenues, assuming all other things stayed the same, we'd be looking at 25 years to pay off the national debt.
Yeah. Close to that anyhow.
So, but that also plays into why they're like intentionally inflating the currency. if they inflate the currency, if $1 this year is worth $2 next year, then it costs half as much to pay down that debt.
Well, yeah, but why is the currency dropping? Because they keep printing more money, chasing less product.
Yeah, which is really weird because we actually still have the situation where we still have the strong dollar that's actually hampering the economy even more. Because of it, I mean, it makes it so other countries can't buy from the U.S. So it's a problem that we've always had with strong dollar policy, is that it hurts our imports, which would give the U.S. additional revenue that doesn't come from the U.S. Citizens and taxpayers. So the last time the deficit was actually, so y'all know, I think Ronald Reagan was the best president by far. I mean, he made his mistakes, but I think he was the best president by far. But he actually started the problem with the huge deficit spending.
Well, I think he's right up there as one of the best presidents.
Yeah, but he created the trend of massive deficit spending.
Yeah, to build up the military against Russia, the Soviet Union.
Oh, that was like a quarter of it.
Yeah.
So he did a lot of spending, and he did grow federal agencies. So, well, saying one time, on one hand, like one of his most famous lines, the 7 scariest words are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." He still added to the government an awful lot.
Yeah.
Then of course, he followed up with Clinton, and he tried to expand federal government as much as he could. Then he got locked out after a midterm shellacking, and they ended up passing the balanced budget bill.
Yeah.
What the hell happened to that thing? That was
they ignored it.
That was arguably one of the best things ever done by Congress. And
if they would have stuck to it.
Yeah, I mean, I know Clinton wasn't directly responsible for it. It wasn't his choice, but he did sign it into law. He could have vetoed.
Um,
Well, it was Newt Gingrich and the other conservatives.
Yeah, I mean, he had a lot of pushback. So
yeah, but Bill Clinton could have vetoed it, and he did. So,
well, wasn't that around the time for his second campaign?
No, it was right after the midterms. It was long before the campaign.
But was that in his first term?
Yeah, it was in his first term. It was in
so he wanted to be able to win again.
Of course.
So that's why he did that.
So, but it was responsible fiscal policy. And then we got, who did we get after that? W?
Yeah.
So then we got W. We had September 11th. So the terrorist attack kind of tattered the economy. And then he started 2 wars. Again, right. I think the solution could have been solved by you knock down 2 of our buildings.
Just stop. Let's stay on the national day here. Jeez.
Come on, I changed the name of the show to Off the Rails.
I don't want to hear this nuke again.
Like I said, it's Rob. We're back to nuking again.
I know it. I knew exactly where he was going.
Hey,
as soon as you mentioned
you
that.
guys debate the 2 nuclear weapons would have been cheaper than 20 years of war?
Depends
come on, Brad. Brad, we could be going out for an ice cream cone, and he could turn it into a discussion about nuking something.
Right, because he got the wrong fucking peppermint chocolate chip cookie dough.
I don't like mint. Beyond that, it's not outside.
He didn't get the right fudge in his packed ice cream.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Anyway. Too many eggs in his cookie dough.
Yeah.
So
you guys didn't tell me we were going to a donkey show.
Oh, jeez.
So
and Brad always listening.
But I think as far as the national debt, Bush actually.
I only go to the donkey show because that's what he said. Man.
Oh my God, we're on.
I had no idea.
we're not off the rails. We're touching the third rail now. Holy shit. Anyway, I can't believe I have a podcast that just talked about donkey shows. Anyway,
You started.
And he's the only one who's been to one.
hey, I did not go to a donkey show. I ended up at a donkey show. That's
Well,
completely
you went to a donkey show. Whether it was an inadvertent or advertent, you went to one.
It's disturbing. It's like watching a car crash. You can't look away. Anyway,
Yeah, Jesus.
So I think Bush, although I thought he was he actually presented some strong leadership after the September 11th attacks. I do think
because
though,
America came together no matter what. If you were right or left, it was like we care about America. That's
one. And
made it so strong.
Bush truly and absolutely loved America.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what he also did was set the precedence of blowing out budgets for emergencies. And what we've had since then was Obama, his emergency was the healthcare emergency and climate emergency and, every emergency that he could think of.
The racism emergency.
Well, but that didn't have anything to do with the budget. He just started ramping up the rhetoric around race.
Oh, he divided this country more than any other president in history.
Okay, but I'm talking specifically about like the application of debt.
Yeah, I know.
So as far as the creation of debt, Bush set the precedence for it. Obama continued it, but Obama didn't really have big crises on his hands. I mean, outside of the two wars, well, he actually created a bunch of crises. He didn't start with crises. And then he created the crisis in, what is it, Libya? Or what is that country? That little country on the north of Africa, the Arab Spring.
Oh, yeah.
He helped foment the Arab Spring, which radicalized more of the Middle East. He set the precedent for Joe for shitty withdrawals, creating ISIS. He was weak on Iran, which also had a lot to do with the creation of ISIS because Iran
was weak on Russia, just like the president before him. The U.S. national debt was in 1990. It was $3 trillion.
Yep, and we're at 10 times that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Trump, and the unfortunate thing about Trump as a businessman is when you're a smart businessman, you don't own anything, you borrow everything, and you basically live off the loans, and you use the loans to acquire assets to generate revenue. Unfortunately, the U.S. government doesn't have assets to generate revenue. All they have is taxpayers. So he couldn't add taxpayers, but he was adding to the debt. And then when COVID came along, I'm sorry, I think every one of those financial stimulus bills, and mind you, as a business owner, I took advantage of the PPP loan.
Who wouldn't? You'd be stupid not to. But then again, I mean, like you said, you're putting more funds chasing less goods because nobody was working, nobody was making anything.
Well, and for me, it was like, I mean, to this day, like the absolute max day today is half what it was before COVID. Like literally, I make less than half what I did before COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what helped me transition and keep going. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without the PPP. So it's understandable what he did. The federal government said you can't operate business, and then they helped him out. I think the mistake he made was to continue bailing people out when they should have shut off federal funding, stopped borrowing. McConnell gave after Biden was elected, McConnell gave him the farm. like
Yeah.
with the debt ceiling, with the spending bills. I think it's time to say that like Mitch McConnell's a rhino. He's not in any way, shape, or form conservative.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
He's the turtle that needs to be in the donkey show.
Oh, jeez.
And we're back on donkey shows. Anyway,
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a Rob show without one.
Well, wow. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think it's time that all these people just get primaried out of existence and replaced with actual conservatives, actual fiscal conservatives. We need to get not just a balanced budget amendment, but we need to get a budget surplus amendment.
Well, that's why a lot of us conservatives are not registered Republicans, because growing up, you always watch these Republicans talk about conservative values, and then they get in an office and they're anti-conservative values.
Yeah,
just
until it's time
crazy.
for election again, then they talk a bunch about the conservative values again.
Yeah.
Well, I'm registered as a Republican because I'll never vote for a Democrat, and B, I want to be involved in what Republicans get.
Well, I mean, I say I will
register as an independent. You can't vote in the primaries.
Well, I say I would vote for the best candidate, but I have yet to see a Democrat that I think was the best candidate.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm just growing up, I get tired of the best candidate being a Republican that speaks a great game, and then he gets into office.
Right.
And he's almost as bad as the Democrats.
I agree with you, but if I have a choice, I'm going Republican no matter what.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only reason a lot of people are registered Republicans up in Alaska is because you couldn't vote in the primaries for a Republican unless you were registered a Republican.
And what that end up leading to? A bullshit primary system.
Yeah.
So and of course I'm a registered libertarian. So I can give you one race that's going on right now where I would actually vote for the Democrat.
Yeah.
And that's the Pennsylvania governor's race. I wouldn't. If I lived in Pennsylvania, I would not vote for Doug Mastriano. I would vote for Josh Shapiro. So Doug Mastriano, the guy's for one, like any member, any elected official that was at January 6th was a fucking idiot.
Because you're an idiot doesn't.
So, but
just because he went to support the president, where was he on January 6th?
At the Capitol building.
He was in the Capitol building.
Yes. I don't know that if he went in, but he was there.
Oh, but you just said yes. I asked if he was in the Capitol building.
I don't know if he went inside. I don't know. Anyway.
Okay. So he was at least on the ground.
We're talking about Pennsylvania. Have you heard of anything going on in Pennsylvania that sounds at least remotely conservative for the last 4 years?
No, I'm not. I still wouldn't vote a Democrat. That's for sure.
So Josh Shapiro. So and that's the thing. So Josh Shapiro, he's actually fiscally conservative. He's a little left leaning on the social spectrum, but again, as a libertarian, that doesn't butt up too much against my ideology. Because
is he okay with killing babies?
Huh? No, he's actually pro-life. Like I said,
he's for a Democrat.
Yeah, he's centrist. And his stance on abortion is limited access, which is in line with most American point of view. Personally, I think it's murder. We've had that discussion, but so socially is a little more liberal. And like, although some individual issues I don't agree with him, like I agree with him a lot more than I do Mastriano, and I wouldn't like disqualify him because he's running with a D next to his name. I'm gonna look at his individual stances, and I'm just more in line with him, primarily due to my feeling that most of the shit is none of the government's business. where he's socially liberal, he's fiscally conservative, he's pro-police, he's
Which is
already
unusual for a
he's
Democrat.
already talked about wanting to get rid of some of these activist prosecutors.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about saying one thing and doing another.
No, it's actually he says one thing and he does it. So,
how's the Philadelphia crime rate right now?
Okay, he's not in charge of Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
He's the candidate for governor.
I haven't heard him speak up about it though.
Actually, he has been, and he's got the endorsement of Nimitz Oz in Philadelphia.
Oh, I don't like Nimitz Oz. Forget him.
Yeah, but
he's better than the Democrat candidate.
Okay, that's for sure. What I'm saying. So Nimitz Oz is the Republican candidate for the Senate. All the police organizations have backed Nimitz Oz and Josh Shapiro.
Wait, how can all of them back both of them?
One's a gubernatorial candidate, and one's a Senate candidate.
They're running for different offices.
I got you.
Okay. So the conservative police orders are actually backing Josh Shapiro too. Why? Because under Doug Mastriano in the last 4 years, Pennsylvania has gotten markedly less safe. And
Josh Shapiro is the Attorney General of Pennsylvania.
I understand.
Right now.
But
he's running for governor.
Yeah, but he's the Attorney General right now. And what is the crime
But
rate?
he just enforces the laws that the government puts into place.
Right. And as Attorney General, all he can do is make recommendations to the local district attorneys. He doesn't have the power to remove him from office. However, if he's governor, he will. Doug Mastriano has had the power for 4 years to remove prosecutors that aren't prosecuting crime, and he's done nothing.
Now, Brad, the question you should have with that is he enforcing the laws out there? Is he doing what a lot of these district attorneys are doing in these really liberal communities and refusing to enforce the laws that are in the books?
So on the local cases, he has no control whatsoever. But on the state level cases, he's prosecuting.
Yeah,
and that's where the difference comes. The governor has ability to interject on local level cases. The state attorney general does not. The state attorney general only has control over state level cases that are handled by the state police. So whereas the governor actually has the ability to enact suspensions and organize new elections, the attorney general does not have that power. And he's actually talked to some degree about that. Man, we're way off the rails. Anyway, so my only point on that was I'm always going to look at the candidates. I'm not going to just say because of whatever letter is by their name. That's the case where the Republican is so bad that I would actually, now in actuality, if I was actually voting there, I'd be looking into third party candidates and like libertarians and even an anarchist. If there's an anarchist party, I'd go over that over what's going on, because at least in anarchy, people are armed and able to fight back.
Well, yeah, that's sort of the point. Is I tend to look at the candidates and what they stand for, not what their party affiliation is. And I mean, in Alaska and down here in Washington, I just haven't seen a Democrat in the area that I'm voting in that I would actually support.
Yeah, I've never seen a Democrat up there that I would support. It's actually looking like your Senate seat up there might be about to flip in the governor's mansion too, right? Brian?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. I dropped out there for a second.
Wifey harassing you again?
No.
So, and then we lost Brian completely. Hopefully he can get back on.
Is he gone?
Yeah, he dropped off. Hopefully he'll
he
get back. So, anyway, but yeah, that was just, we'll just keep going. Hopefully he pops back on. But yeah, so my point was like,
you there?
Yeah. Sometimes the rhinos are so bad, the Democrats actually make more sense than the rhinos.
No, the wife is up in Canada.
Yeah. So, and the reason in that race I would support Josh Shapiro is, while I don't agree with his social policies, uh, he's anti-crime and he's actually fiscally conservative. So he's definitely an actual like moderate, like Clinton era moderate Democrat. You know what Manchin pretends to be.
Well, Clinton era moderate would be what a lot of conservatives are these days.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
I mean, as we move forward, what the Republicans are today is what the Democrats were 30 years ago, and what the Democrats are today compared to 30 years ago is way left. I mean, it's everything has sort of gone left as we've moved on.
Yeah, but I don't think that as far as the conservative values, they really haven't changed.
Yeah,
I just think rhinos are getting exposed. That's all it is. So
Mehmet Oz is definitely going to be a rhino. He supported transgenderism back in 2011 before it was even a thing.
So again, on transgenderism, transgender youth, all that bullshit, I don't support. If a dude wants to wear a dress, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. He just doesn't need to force it onto my kids.
Right. So there's a difference between letting people live their lives and letting them force it onto other people. And again, what you do in the privacy of your own home is none of the government's fucking business, as long as it's all consensual adults. When you start exposing the kids, that's where it's different. And Mehmet Oz has spoken out at great length against transing kids, against gender affirming care for children, because a lot of that is just normal confusion. And then you add with it the additives from the plastics that are actually, I mean, they're causing hermaphroditic frogs. So imagine what it's doing to our kids. And here we are. We still keep buying bottled water and shit and sucking that stuff down. And yeah. So Nimitz Oz, like where it matters, I think he's going to be conservative. He's a little socially liberal, and again, on social issues, as long as you're not forcing it down other people's throats, I don't really care, because it's not the government's fucking business.
Yeah, well, he was also pro-abortion too, and he doesn't seem to know when life begins either.
Yeah,
he even talked about it on his show, along with the transing of the kids.
Well, and then you have to ask how much of that comes from the fact that he's actually in a fairly liberal state. And if you come out against every liberal position, you're just not going to get elected.
I don't know. It happened in Virginia.
Virginia's always been purple. Like, it's not a blue state. If you look at their governor record, they literally go Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. Now, granted, they have a weird system in Virginia where, like, the governor gets 1 4-year term and they can't run for the next election. So it's really weird. You can only serve 1 term as governor, and then you have to wait until somebody else gets a chance, and then you can go back and run again. It's really kind of weird, but
that is really
a lot of states are pretty freaking weird.
So, but I mean, at the same time, I get it. You make sure that you don't get one person a monopoly on power, and you don't give them enough time to try and rig the election to stay in place,
like in
because
California.
they just can't stay in place. And then you also like take away that pressure that, oh, in 4 years I'm going to have to run for election. So you real quick find out who the person is. So like when they run again 4 years later, you know exactly what they were going to do when they weren't looking for a re-election. So it's interesting. But I like the idea of like fiscal conservatives, because that's what we need. Like the number one issue in the U.S., or the top 2 issues to me, we need fiscal conservatives, and we need
that's not an issue. That's a wish list. The issues are the debt or inflation.
Well,
right. Well, fiscal conservatism would say that you don't spend more than you take in.
Right, but that's not an issue.
Well, they need to get this debt under control. And this clock needs to stop moving up at such a fat pace. It needs to start going down.
Well,
This
they
is
say
insane.
They say in 2026 it's going to be up to 40 trillion.
Oh yeah, Biden.
That's the projections for 2050, something like 60 or 70 trillion.
Well, I mean, if Biden stays in office, if he gets reelected, which I don't think there's much chance he would, but if him or somebody like him gets put back in office, you'll see it go up to 40 trillion long before that. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's just
Well,
crazy.
the time machine says that the budget shutdown is going to happen in 2026. But
Yeah.
obviously they'll keep expanding the ceiling.
Well, right now there is no ceiling. They completely removed it. That's part of the problem.
It says on the debt clock that there's a budget shutdown in 2026.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But I think the cure on the national debt is specifically not just a balanced budget amendment, but a budget surplus amendment with a requirement. Half the surplus needs to be put aside for actual emergencies, so we don't get into the situation again where we have to borrow a bunch of money because there's an emergency, because guess what's always true? Sooner or later, there will be an emergency.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is, the fact of the matter is that we need to get to the point where we're only spending what we're bringing in, and we're not taking out massive debts. It's different if you go into something like World War II. Obviously, you do what you have to win the war, but on a normal basis, they need to have a balanced budget like we did back in the 90s, where you only spend what you bring in.
Well, and that's why I was saying a budget surplus. Half of that budget surplus should go to an emergency reserve fund, kind of like Alaska has, because Alaska has their budget surplus fund.
Oh yeah.
And then after that, you can dictate half of it goes to the budget surplus fund and half of it goes towards paying down the national debt. So then, it doesn't start growing, it starts going backwards, which is exactly what we're talking about needs to happen. And then...
Well, the question is, how do we get to the point where we do have a balanced budget every year, where they can't, unless it's something like World War II or World War III, which we could be going into. How do we get to that point? I mean, I've heard a lot of the arguments for a convention of states and changing the Constitution around, but I know you're 100% against having a convention of states too.
Plus the politicians that would be running that Constitution of states, not to impose some sort of dictatorship in the Constitutional Convention.
My only issue with that is
agree on anything.
My only issue
of the states could agree on anything. Sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
No, my only issue is, I mean, we'll talk about it's time to trash this country and start over, but yet we're not willing to have a convention of states and say, well, instead of trashing the whole country and starting over, why not try to fix what we already have?
Well, but that's the problem with the Constitution with a convention of the states to amend the Constitution. They could just throw away the Constitution. That's the danger.
Well, and that's a danger, but rather than saying, let's just trash everything and start over, why not say, well, let's try to fix it and hope that they don't trash it and start over?
And again, you're trusting politicians to do what they say they're going to do.
Look, the Convention of the States, what has to happen in order for them to agree on anything? You have to have 2/3 of the states agree on one thing in order to make a change in the Constitution. The odds of that happening are very, very slim, in my opinion.
Okay, so let me reframe it this way, Brad. So you got half the Democrats. You have the Democrats thinking that the whole entire country is a shit show and needs to be scrapped and started over. Then you got a bunch of the conservatives that think that the country's been ruined by liberal democracies and a lot of this stuff has to be scrapped and taken over. So you really think that between, like, granted, they have different ideas of which way they should go. You think that first vote to scrap the Constitution couldn't happen? Really?
I do. I don't think that either of them would agree on anything because they'd have to have something in place and ready to go, and they wouldn't be able to agree on either of those.
Why? Why would they have to have something in place? They could both vote to scrap the Constitution while they work out.
And then what? Then we have another civil war?
And there you go.
Because you got two sides fighting against each other. 2/3 of the states to scrap the Constitution is not going to happen.
Well, my whole argument is, if we're talking about we're moving into a civil war, let's just start over. Let's scrap what we have. Let's break away and and let the California be its own place, New York be its own place, and we'll form a new United States with with all the other states. If we're talking that, then a convention of states doesn't seem so crazy to me. Because
Well,
I mean, if it doesn't work out, then we're just at the same spot that we are right now, where people are talking about civil war and breaking off and scrapping what we have.
Here's my thing. The problem is California's, I don't believe, is as blue as they think that they are.
Well,
I mean, they got the big liberal cities, but there's a lot of rural areas.
well, it is
very,
it
very
is it is as blue as they say they are, because the population numbers
right
along
in
the
big
coast,
cities.
just like in Washington. Now, if you move away from the coast, then yeah, it's extremely red.
Right.
Unfortunately, there's not much population in those areas.
Exactly, the population. That's why it's as blue as they say.
Look at what's happening in San Francisco. Stuff's starting to shift in San Francisco. I mean, what? They already got rid of that stupid George
Well, they
Soros.
got rid of the DA, but
So
and then everybody applauded as they signed those ridiculous bills into law.
yeah, I mean, they're doing some crazy stuff there. Yeah, they took one good step, but then they took 10 steps backwards.
Didn't they just arrest the guy that was in charge of the voting machines down there?
Yeah,
in Los Angeles County.
Yeah,
So
and
we don't really know how the people are actually voting in those major cities either.
And did you guys see that one of the co-founder of the Louisiana chapter of Black Lives Matter got sentenced to 6 years in prison for voting fraud?
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
Yeah, there's a lot of voting shit that's coming out right now.
Well, what did you think of Kanye West's White Lives Matter shirt?
Oh, that was great. What a troll move.
Did you see his any part of his interview with Tucker?
No, I haven't watched Tucker in a year.
Carlson, I knew it. I knew Rob was a Tucker Carlson. I fucking knew it.
Actually,
he watched the whole interview with Tucker.
I saw it because Timcast put up part of it.
Mm-hmm. Everybody's been playing part of it. You watched the whole thing, Rob. It's okay.
No, I really didn't. Dude, you want
to go to a donkey show with Tucker Carlson. It's okay.
Oh, jeez.
Bro,
a donkey show and Tucker. Oh, yeah.
No Fox News here.
Like I said, I love Tucker as a person. I think he's a really cool guy, but I haven't watched his show in over a year.
I think the guy's a troll.
Yeah, you like him. You like that little troll donkey.
No, actually, I fucking hate most of what I hear clips of him saying. Like, I really don't like him. But his interview with Kanye West, I thought what Kanye West had to say was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and then also some of the snippets of the interview with Dana White and him talking about his friendship with Donald Trump.
He usually has some pretty good interviews.
Yeah. Like I don't like Tucker's commentary, but he does good interviews. So anyway,
but you watch him, it's okay.
Yeah, no. Anyway, so back to it. So yeah, we definitely I think how do we wake up the U.S. populace? That's part of the problem with the U.S. not like really like wrapping their heads around how bad the debt issue is because of the way Americans live their lives.
What, credit card debt?
You got the average American is got like $5,000 in credit card debt alone. I can't even imagine that. I've got like 1,000, and I'm like, I hate how high my credit card debt is. Like, I can't imagine having, $5,000 in credit card debt.
I don't even like that I owe a debt on 2 cars. That just drives me crazy. I'm like, dude, I should have these cars paid off. And
of course,
I'm getting really close. But the only reason I have 2 is because I had to take one over for my wife's deceased sister. So I had to do that because she loved that car. They were just going to go back to the bank, and I was like, hell no. So I went and got a high interest rate loan to keep it.
But debt is horrible.
you didn't rack up debt for a donkey show.
That's right.
Like
didn't
you?
either, did you? Those things can't be that expensive. You said you got dragged into it. Now you're saying that you racked up debt? Good night.
I said at least you didn't spend it on the donkey show.
Yeah, which
Say
leads
I
me to
did
believe
anything.
that you did.
You did.
At least I didn't. So that means to me that you did.
So what are we going to title this message? National debt.
National donkey debt.
National debt, conservatism, and donkey shows.
Oh, geez.
No, well, so what really can we do? We can stop the spending. That's obvious. So we stop sending money to foreign places and spending money on stupid green energy and keep it here. We need to build up our military, and we need to stock up our oil reserves, because if for some reason World War III does happen, we're at the bottom of the barrel as far as our oil reserves comes. So, and we're getting rid of it more and more each day because of this puppet that we have in the White House.
Well, geez, for this argument that he hasn't hurt our oil industry in the U.S., our production of energy, but yet we went from, as Trump was in office, we went to exporting energy to, within 2 years of him coming into office, importing most of our energy.
Yeah, and
Like, so how was it not your policies that affected this?
Right. When you cut regulations and you stop drilling and you stop fracking, how is that not going to cause a problem?
And then when we need more energy, what does he do? He decides to go beg Venezuela instead of American producers.
And he lets out Venezuelan fucking criminals. Sorry about the language. He lets out Venezuelan criminals to help get the Venezuelan oil that he's going to pay an arm and a leg for anyways, when we're sitting on a plethora of liquid gold here in America.
So I've got.
And then he starts throwing money at green energy. That's not feasible. We just simply do not have the capabilities, A, to store it, and B, to produce it.
So do you guys think that we could get the Democrats on board with opening up more oil drilling? If we create a sovereign wealth fund out of it to pay for all these social programs, the way, Alaska has the sovereign wealth fund.
What did they do with the pipelines in Alaska?
Hold on, I'm not done. So it would be along the lines of what their golden boys do in Denmark, Norway, Sweden, the Scandinavian countries. That's exactly what they do.
The only way you could get the Democrats on board with that is if it was by producing more green energy.
Yes, that's exactly. That's you're absolutely.
They have dived too much into this green energy, hole to dig themselves out. They are 100% on board and getting rid of oil and coal and
okay. So how about like this? So, and it's talking tax, which I hate, of course, but most places in the world have some sort of natural resource tax, so the country benefits from the exploitation of natural resources anyways. But like 10% of the revenues from the sale of oil goes into a sovereign fund. Say half that fund goes towards paying down the national debt. A quarter of the funds go towards funding research and production of renewable technologies, which would still be wasted, but I think that would be a good way to get libtards on board with opening up the spigots, because now that's the more oil we pump, the more money is going to be spent on the green resources that they want. Does that make sense?
To us it makes sense, but to the people who worship Mother Gaia, no, it doesn't, because then you're just going to
they've gone so deep into that foxhole of get out of oil. I don't care what it takes to everything's got to be green energy by tomorrow. That if it has anything to do with drilling more oil, I don't think the Democrats would be on board.
No, they are absolutely committed to getting rid of fossil fuels, and they're idiots. Not saying that what you're saying isn't feasible or it isn't logical, Rob. I just think that the Democrats are so freaking stupid and so committed into this whole. First, it was ice age, then it was global warming, and now it's climate change. They're so into that god, just like they are killing babies, so that they're not going to back out of it. You give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. We got to start taking miles away from them.
So then how do you do it when there are still so many liberals in the country?
Get rid of them.
Yeah, I say your
Nuke them. Nuke them.
Exactly.
I knew that. I opened the door for you.
Just start spraying.
In which case, you just let Biden keep going. Okay, so I have some interesting numbers here.
There he goes packing again, Rob or Brad.
That ain't me.
Oh.
Okay, I think the Afghanistan numbers changed now. But here's some 2021 numbers for you, or 2020 numbers. Afghanistan, 4.89 billion in aid. Israel, 3.3 billion. Jordan, 1.72 billion. Egypt, 1.46 billion. Iraq, 960 million. Ethiopia, 922 million. Yemen, 809 million. Colombia, 800 million. Nigeria, 793 million. Lebanon, 790 million.
Iran, 80 billion.
Kenya, 591.3 million. South Sudan, that isn't even a country, really, 749 million.
No, I think that's one thing we all agree on is this handing money to foreign entities has to end. I mean, there are some exceptions to that. There are some that, yeah, we should be on board and trying to help out, but most of these is just idiotic, especially when it's somewhere that is anti-American. That is, I would hardly be able to call an ally.
Yeah, and don't forget the 20 billion or whatever it was, or 30 billion in direct military aid we gave the Taliban by leaving all of our equipment behind.
Oh yeah,
that's exactly what I was talking about when I said 80 billion to Iran. That's where most of it went.
That's funny.
What about all the oil we just sold to China? Does that count?
Yeah, out of our national reserve, strategic reserve, which now they're thinking about diving back into, even though it's at historical lows. They haven't had the national reserve this low, strategic reserve this low since the 80s.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying.
They're not thinking about it; they're doing it.
If we get drawn into a nuclear Armageddon like this fucking idiot in the White House has been talking about, we're going to have a serious problem defending ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, but he's not totally wrong as far as Russia has really amped up the nuclear threat.
Oh, yeah, and as soon as Russia does a tactical nuke on Ukraine, that automatically is going to provoke a response from NATO, and being how we pay most of NATO's salary, we're going to be involved.
Yeah, and then the question becomes, does Britain, even if we don't strike, Britain can strike and France can strike?
Yeah.
Because they're both nuclear nations.
All part of NATO allies.
Yeah. And as soon as Russia retaliates back, we're in a nuclear World War.
Third World War.
We already got North Korea launching
missiles
over Japan.
Off here. There we go.
Edit that out.
Was that a car alarm or was that a three-wheeler?
That was the car alarm.
You should see the spinners on my trike.
The trikes aren't actually trikes; they're just motorcycles with sidecars.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You sent me a picture.
So
Yeah, you're in the Philippines, not in China.
Yeah.
Or Thailand.
No,
Thailand.
Brad was sitting there like, oh, tuk-tuks. And I'm like, no, tuk-tuks is Thailand.
Nope, India,
Well, most of
America,
Asia except for the
Madagascar.
Philippines. But the big
Scooters is
transportation
the
here
big
is
thing in China.
jeepneys. The Jeeps here are like kind of interesting. They're like really long, extended, almost military style Jeeps with 2 benches on either side, and that's how you get around.
Yeah.
Makes it really
They're
affordable to get
like
around, but oh
Disney
my god.
hats.
So, anyways, the mass transit here is definitely, that's funny. Third world country always has better mass transit than the first world. Go figure.
No, what's funny is you say that $50 is like a week's worth of food over there, but then the transportation, like to buy a car or something, is ridiculous.
Yeah, and most people don't own cars.
Well, yeah, they own motorcycles with sidecars.
No, most people don't own any sort of transportation. They take the public transportation, which is why
Exactly
there's
what I'm
buses and
saying.
jeeps and trikes.
Exactly what I'm saying.
Now, where I live here, almost everybody here either has a scooter. That's what they call a motor, but it's a scooter, like a Vespa. But well, actually, most of them are like Yamaha Mios,
Right.
or and then like probably a quarter of the people here have cars. So
Interesting.
yeah, it's definitely a different world over here.
How many people have electric vehicles? Like
None.
electric? They don't even have electric scooters?
Not really, no.
That's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, where would they charge it in a place where the power grid's about as reliable as California?
Hello, solar panels, dude. They're putting them on the
no.
roofs of cars now, you know.
I haven't seen a single solar panel.
Yeah, first world problems.
Yep. So anyway, but yeah, I think the reality is just like our whole government's just completely, hey, they're off the rails. They should join the show. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, the government's completely off the rails. So the spending's off the rails. The regulations are off the rails. And I don't see an easy out. Like, no matter what the solution is going to be painful.
Well, it's like most of these people tend to think is, oh, it's debt to China, so what we'll do is just cancel the debt. It's like, yeah, and then you destroy the word of the U.S. and who's going to let us borrow money in the future if we ever decide to?
Yeah, nobody's going to. And don't we have in the Federal Reserve like a lot of the world's gold?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not for very long.
Yeah.
We did
at
that.
what point in time do all these countries come and say, "Hey, we want our freaking gold back"?
Well, yeah. And that's one thing I would argue is we should have never gotten off the gold standard. I don't like the fact that we have nothing backing up our dollar.
I agree with you.
That was Roosevelt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, we should get back onto a standard that backs up the dollar to help stabilize it.
Exactly. And then we're gonna have to. We need to get rid of the Fed, or at least audit them and find out what the hell they've been doing, because aren't they? What don't they have 3 main purposes? To keep down inflation, to keep people employed, and I don't know what the third one is, but those 2 is their responsibility. And
I never really understood why they had a 2% goal anyway.
And inflation is at a 40-year high. What is the Fed actually doing?
Nothing.
Exactly. So they should be audited.
Yeah, they didn't react to any of the spending. They should have been out there publicly saying we can't do all this spending, and they weren't. They abdicated their responsibilities completely.
And now they want to push us into a central bank digital currency where it has to be verified and tracked, and they can do whatever they want with it.
Well, as nefarious as that sounds, it's no different than the banking now. The government can flip a switch and take away all your money.
Honestly, I think one of the biggest problems we have with the national debt is the people don't truly understand what $1 trillion is. I think most people hear $1 trillion and it's just a word to them. They
Yeah.
don't truly, and even if you hold up the number, all they go is, well, yeah, there's some digits there. Okay. They don't realize that that's 12 zeros before you get to the 31.
Oh,
This
that's why I
and,
think
and it's not
using the
broken down to
phrase
yeah.
thanks to your government, you owe $100,000 in debt almost.
Right.
Yeah,
And
I think
that's just to the government or the country.
I mean,
And
I think it's
a lot of reason for that, Brian, is because of our
yeah.
school system.
Well, yeah, but it's just a word to them. It's not an act. They don't acquaint it to themselves or their family. They don't truly understand what $1 trillion means. I mean,
Right.
you really have to figure out how do we make it so everybody truly understands what shithole we're in right now.
Can you?
Well, I don't know. You could show them back in 1990, we were only 3 trillion, and here we are now at 10 times that.
Well, that's the question: is how do you show everybody the trouble we're in? How do you make it so everybody truly understands what the hole that we're digging for ourselves?
30% of the country's on the government dole because of that debt, and they're not going to vote
Yeah.
against it.
And that's just increasing the debt.
Well, and
nobody
that's
will know until they get educated, and they're not going to get educated until it hits them where it matters most. When their subsidies start not bringing them as much as it used to, they're gonna have to figure something out.
well, and that was one of the biggest problems in Alaska with the Bush, and that's the reason that Murkowski got reelected many times, is because she has history in the Senate. Is the Senate, right? Murkowski? No, she's
Yeah.
in the House. The Senate. Okay, yeah, Senate. She has history
Yeah,
in the
she took her
Senate.
dad's
More history you have in the Senate, the more power you have. So she can go to the Bush and say, you know what? I have all this power. I will get you this money. I will bring you federal money and give it to you. And that's how she got reelected, promising them money.
Do you think
And then what the
do you
people in
think
the Bush don't realize is when that happens, then the value of what they're getting goes down, and then the cost of what they have to purchase goes up.
So do you guys think that states should be capped at receiving federal funds? That they shouldn't be able to receive funds more than they contribute?
I think it depends. If you're not taking state taxes from your citizens.
Well, that's a tough one, Rob, just because I mean you have a tiny little state, but you're trying to I don't know. That's
well, because but then it goes back to fiscal responsibility for those tiny states.
Yeah.
You're a tiny state. You have a small budget. Get more realistic in your expectations. Sorry, you're from the state with the bridge to nowhere.
Okay, and if you're Alaska,
yeah, but how do you build up the land? You have to have something to get there to build it up. If you don't have access to that land, then it's never going to be built up. So a bridge to nowhere means jack shit to me.
But okay.
Yeah, of course. There was no bridge. It's a bridge to nowhere because the bridge isn't there yet. If you want something there, build the bridge so you can get there.
Alaska
so if the state wants the bridge, why shouldn't they have to finance it?
Well, that's the thing is transportation. The U.S. Federal government is there to help push
interstate
transportation
commerce,
between states and
commerce
giving
in any way, shape, or form.
Don't they have ice bridges over there? I mean, come on. But no, look, Alaska has a lot of natural resources. Yes, they have.
Well, if they can actually get access to it and get the.
So then, should the federal government, if what Rob is saying, should the federal government be in charge of what Alaska does with their land?
The biggest problem Alaska has right now is the federal government getting in the way.
Exactly.
The people from California, from Washington, from Oregon, from New York, from Michigan, coming up there every time they try to do a project and suing the state and suing the government, the the groups trying to open up areas, trying to develop certain things, they sue them over and over and over again. I mean, just look at this bridge they tried to build across the Cook Inlet since the 70s. And they keep trying to build this bridge because right now there's one access point into the valley from Anchorage. If that is cut off, then the only way you get up to the rest of the state from Anchorage is plane. Yeah, pretty much plane. Or you take, you take a dog sled through the mountains.
Right.
There needs to be a second access point, and we've tried to build a bridge across the Cook Inlet 1,000 times, and we've gotten really close. And then some environmental group from down in the States, from the lower 48, comes in and goes, "Oh, well, you need to do this." It's like, we did that 5 times now. We've done that study 5 times. Yeah, but that was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago. Well, yeah, it was that long because you had us do 3,000 other studies that took us this long to do. Well, it's been too long. So now you got to go back and redo that study.
And what direct effect does what happened in Alaska have on Washington, Oregon, or California, or even New York for that matter?
Well, because they look at it as a world issue instead of just.
I get it, but it does. But like, I'm with you, Brian. I'm with you 100%. The federal government should have no jurisdiction for what a state does with its natural resources.
Well, and it's not even the federal government.
But they also shouldn't get
the
money
judicial
beyond what
system.
they contribute to the federal budget.
Right, but the thing is if they could utilize the natural resources, then they could contribute to the federal budget, correct?
Well, if the court systems and these environmentalist groups would get out of the way, then Alaska would be able to produce its own resources.
Right. If they were able to drill, if they were able to
and
they were
which
able to take advantage of their lumber industry. Well, I'm sure they've got plenty of fish up there that they can catch and fucking send down to the States and shit.
Well, the great example of the federal government being in the way is Anwar. I mean, here is a territory that has that is really nothing. I mean, it's everybody that lives in that territory 100% supports drilling for oil, and it's such a tiny little footprint on the territory. I mean, you look everywhere else that we've drilled in Alaska, you can barely tell that there was ever an oil field there, except for maybe some marks in the grass, which disappears later. Caribou herds go up with drilling and with oil pipelines because it heats the area up a little bit. The caribou herds herd around the pipeline. Just look at the Alyeska pipeline. The caribou herds love the Alyeska pipeline because it heats the ground, makes the grass grow year round. And so in the middle of winter, they herd around there and eat grass and their numbers grow. And then you barely notice that there was ever anything there. It's just the polar bear numbers are going up. It's just but yet down here everybody goes, oh, the polar bear numbers are going down. No, it's not. There's more polar bears today than there has been in 100 years.
And polar bears are rapey.
Are what?
Did you just say they're rapey?
They're rapey and they're murderous.
Well, they're they're one of the most aggressive bears in the world, but yeah.
They eat little children.
They eat little children. Well, they'll eat anything they can get their hands on.
That's what Jeremy Clarkson tells me anyways.
Well,
I take all of my environmental information from Clarkson.
Okay, but Brian, so you completely avoided the question. Why should the federal government be paying for a state development project?
Because they're blocking so much of it.
It's supposed to be spending federal
funds.
If the federal
government would get out of the way and just let the state develop it.
Okay, that's not that has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Whatever.
That has everything to do with it, Rob.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Look, bro, listen. Okay, Brian is saying if the government gets out of the way, then they wouldn't need the government to help them fund it. The reason it's costing so much now is because the government is in the way. Am I wrong, Brian?
No, the government is blocking everything, so they need to be in there to help get it going if they're going to keep blocking it, making it so damn expensive to do anything. Or if they get out of the way and let the private industries do this, then we wouldn't need government funds to do it.
Okay,
Exactly.
so let's reframe that. Murkowski, who was a powerful senator, got funds
Ugh.
for a bridge to connect 500 people.
And why didn't it
That
get done?
bridge would be obsolete decades before they would ever even see any sort of financial returns on that. That is my point. These
How
like
would it be,
pet
how would
projects,
it be obsolete?
huh?
How would it be obsolete?
Do you have any idea how fast concrete breaks down in those temperatures?
What does that have to do with the price of rice in Russia?
The fact that before they ever got any...
So they wouldn't maintain the bridge?
Okay, if you're going to ask me a question, let me answer it. Yes, that's the point. They're going to continue putting money into it. They would never get any financial return for the bill. But all it is a sweetheart deal for Alaska because a bunch of people are going to get to work on it. But half of that labor is going to come from other states. So it's going to connect a town of like 500 people and an area that they think might have some potential to develop, but maybe not. So, and then like Anwar, okay, so I'm against Anwar even being Anwar. Like, I think it's ridiculous how the government keeps going and snapping up state lands and declaring it federal parks. I'm sorry, it needs to be agreed to by the state, and the federal government needs to buy it from the state if they're going to try and snap up stuff and make federal parks. However,
so the people building the bridge are going to go up there, work on the bridge, not spend any money up there, go back home, go back up to work on the bridge, go back home. So there's not going to be any sort of commerce being done or anything. There's not going to be any advancement when they have all these people up there working on this bridge.
yes,
Let alone when the bridge is finished and all the trade is being brought back and forth. There's no benefit there.
Yes, there is benefit for the state of Alaska. That's the fucking point. It benefits the state of Alaska. We're fucking taking out debt to pay for shit that's going to benefit the state of Alaska and nobody else. Meanwhile, Alaska puts aside money from its oil revenues. It doesn't kick that money.
So Alaska doesn't pay any money to the federal government at all. Is that what you're saying?
They take in more. They take in more federal revenue than they pay. That's what I'm saying.
But they pay.
They're not the only.
They pay.
Wyoming is.
But
the
they
same.
pay.
Rhode Island is the same. Pretty much every low population state takes more money than they put in.
But they do pay.
Okay,
So,
Brad,
but not as much as they're contributing.
I'm gonna send you $50. Send me 100.
I already did that, Rob.
I'm saying do it now, and then we'll do it again tomorrow, and we'll just keep here because I want
to. No, okay, but then what I'm going to say to you is you have to stop sticking up for Ukraine.
No, I disagree.
You have to stop sticking up for Ukraine.
I disagree with the federal government wasting billions of dollars by getting into a lot of these projects. But my biggest thing is the federal land, the federal government owns 60% of Alaska. They have 60% of Alaska, the federal government, locked away, 222 million acres. They are the largest landowner in Alaska. And then the state locked away another probably 30% or 35%. So there's 5% that's open for private industry.
And that there is the problem. But that is like restrictive land usage. And what I'm saying, when Anwar was open for drilling, that money was not being funneled to pay for the pet projects that Alaska wanted. And it wasn't. I didn't hear anybody in Anchorage going, "Hey, we really need this bridge to nowhere." No, it was politicians talking about it, and politicians using it as bragging. This is what I got for our state, but it was something that the state didn't need.
No, I think the biggest issue Alaskans had was the fact that people are calling it a bridge to nowhere, because that never makes any sense, because it's always a bridge to nowhere until the bridge is built and then the area is developed. Whether the federal government should have been involved in it is the debate.
And that was my point, was the federal government. I have the same issue with Hawaii. The federal government giving them interstate commerce funds for projects that aren't interstate.
Well, that's kind of harsh on Hawaii, I guess. I mean,
but it's
it's not like you're going to build
every
bridges
one of
in
their
between the
projects.
islands.
No, because every single other state, when they have an intrastate project, they have to fund it intrastate.
The two states together. I see what
No,
you're saying.
intrastate. If it's within the state and it doesn't go outside the state, it's a state route.
Okay.
The state pays for it.
Okay, I was
So
thinking.
please explain to me how Hawaii and Alaska have interstates.
How they have
Alaska actually doesn't.
Alaska does not have interstates.
But Hawaii does.
Yeah, that's what we've always said is how does Hawaii have interstates? Alaska isn't allowed to have interstates.
So and then the funding mechanism that they were using for the bridge to nowhere, and I call it the bridge to nowhere because there is not a need at the time. They're wanting to build a bridge for billions of dollars, which the cost is going to overrun by at least 10 times.
Which is to open the land so it can be developed.
But for future development. Okay, so if you guys want to do that, then you appropriate your tax funds at your state level.
And Alaskans weren't arguing that. It was the whole point of they're calling it the bridge of nowhere and arguing that there was no reason to have this bridge. It's a bridge to nowhere. It's like BS. It's a bridge to somewhere. It's a bridge to that land. It's a bridge to open up the area. Now we can debate over whether federal tax dollars should have gone to that or not, but most Alaskans would have said probably not.
Going into state projects.
And most Alaskans probably would have said
national debt, and we're funding projects for local states that are pet projects for the local states.
And most Alaskans probably would have said that federal tax dollars should not go into a project like that.
Who paid for the international airport that's there for 50 residents?
Huh?
International airport, that's where?
The Ketchikan International Airport.
Of course, that opens up a cross-border trade as well.
But who paid for that airport is what I want to know.
Probably like most of those type of airports throughout the U.S., which would be the federal government.
Okay, so I wonder how much that cost in comparison to a bridge.
The price tag on the bridge was considerably higher.
Tell me the numbers. If it's considerably higher, give me a number. Facts don't care about our feelings.
Okay, so we're looking at $400 million for the Gravina Island Bridge. That will not connect to any other state.
Okay.
And then the Ketchikan Airport, since that's the one you put.
What would it have cost by today's standards?
How much? That actually does connect with another country.
For how much in today's standard?
$39 million.
$39 million in today's standard.
The original cost of the airport.
The original cost of the airport was $39 million. The original cost. When was this airport built?
No, that's the original cost. Or that's the original cost in today's standard. That's what I just said. The original cost at the time was $23 million. And when the airport was originally built in the first place, before it was designated as an international airport, was $7.6 million. And that was paid for by state coffers. When it became an international airport and the federal government chipped in on it, they chipped $39 million in.
So they want to throw another $89 million at it to expand it.
Yes, because of the amount of traffic that they're actually getting through there, because of changes.
Because these people from all across the nation and other countries fly to this little airport, and then what? There's nothing to do there apparently, according to you. Nothing of any sort of interest that could bring any other commerce. Then what do?
Okay, Ketchikan isn't Gravina Island. You're talking about two different places, like probably about 1,000 miles apart.
The Gavina Island Bridge, commonly referred to as a bridge to nowhere, was a proposed bridge to replace the ferry that currently connects the town of Ketchikan, Alaska, United States, with Gavina Island, and island that contains the Ketchikan International Airport, as well as 50 residents.
50 residents.
So what do these people do at that island when they get off the plane? They go and get on a ferry. So here's what we could do. We could turn that bridge into a toll bridge, and that could generate revenue, could it not? And apparently it would be used sufficiently. Guessing that they have more than just one ferry that goes back and forth, being how there's an international airport there.
Mostly just connections or freight.
Yeah, because they ain't got no way to get out of there except for get on a ferry or catch a fucking bush plane.
Yeah, basically. But there's
basically. So I mean, what?
Dude, I'm not arguing for an international airport there. I think it's stupid.
No, you're arguing against a bridge that would be useful.
For who?
For the people that go to this stupid international airport that want to go to somewhere in Alaska without taking an
international cargo airport. The only people that go there are connecting flights. There's not a bunch of people going there
to go to Alaska. Nobody's going there to go to Alaska.
Dude,
if they're going to Alaska, they go to Anchorage.
It is nowhere near Anchorage. You can't drive from Ketchikan to Anchorage.
Yeah, not right now, that's for sure.
You never will be able to.
No, all I said was if you're going to Alaska, you fly into Anchorage or maybe Fairbanks.
Yeah.
I say you don't fly into Ketchikan, you fly into Anchorage.
So where Ketchikan is, it's in all those islands that go along Canada. That's where Ketchikan is.
Yep. Mm-hmm. North of Juneau.
Right.
So, like, the argument can be made. Like, well, I mean, Juneau's closer to Washington State than it is to 75% of the population of the state.
Yep, and most of the state will never see Juneau. The capital should have been moved out of Juneau years ago. We voted to move it out of Juneau many times. But the politicians love Juneau because they can go down there and do whatever they want, and most Alaskans have no idea because they don't go down there.
Exactly. So, Ketchikan is a connection point for cargo flights. I mean, that's it. It allows smaller cargo planes to go because the sheer volume of freight that's sent to Alaska doesn't compare to most U.S. states because the population's so small. Huh?
What's in Ketchikan?
Fishing.
Some moose. Some fish.
Moose. 50 people.
Lots of fish.
So people probably.
It's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place, but there's just not. I mean, there's not much there. There's not much built up. It's a fishing community.
So people, like crabbing isn't a big thing there.
Yeah, you could go out and do some crabbing, or go out and do some fishing.
Right? I mean, I could go down south of Houston, Texas, and go crabbing.
Not the same thing.
I know.
But let's see here. Good comparison. It'd be like building a $400 million bridge to Depot Bay, Oregon.
Okay.
I threw that one up there because Brad grew up in the Northwest, so I'm assuming at some point he went to Newport and Depot Bay.
Oh yeah.
So that would be like building a $500 million bridge from Newport to Depot Bay. It would be retarded. It would never happen, and the federal government definitely wouldn't fund it.
No,
but projects like that help balloon the out of control federal spending and the out of control federal debt.
Now, being an Alaskan, our biggest problem is that we can't develop our land. That New York and Washington and California have developed all this land. They've built up their riches, and then they come and block another state from doing it. And we sit there going, yeah, you're the perfect example of how not to treat our territory.
And yet Alaska's complaining that they can't do what New York did to their own territory.
New York is blocking Alaskans from deciding how to run their own territory.
Yeah, and I think that's bullshit too. But I just think the reality is that you got states doing the same thing that you've got the federal government doing, and that's spending money that they don't have, and they're expecting the federal government to pick up the tab. And of course, the federal government's not giving up any of their spending priorities. So when they do those little pet projects for the states, it adds to the deficit because they're not going to wheel back any of the stuff that they're already doing. That's why the whole infrastructure bill was like so disastrous, and it's going to be even worse because none of those projects that they're supposed to stop paying for in 10 years or 5 years, they're not going to stop paying for any of it. The federal government never stops paying for anything. And when that bridge in Ketchikan gets destroyed after 10 winters of swinging from 90 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer to 90, or well, Ketchikan's not that cold, but like 20 below in the winter, that bridge is going to get torn up because there is nothing that stands up to that kind of cold. So the federal government's going to end up being on the hook for doing the repairs for it because now it's a federal bridge. That's my problem with the bridge to nowhere.
Yeah, it's
not a bridge to nowhere.
Not a bridge to nowhere.
Not a bridge to nowhere.
No, but that's the name.
That's what the lower 48 have decided to call it.
That's my problem with the Gravina Island Bridge, spending $400 million to connect an airport that people don't use, that people aren't going to use. And it's a nice wishful thinking that more people will use it in place of the ferries, but it's going to save what, 30 minutes on the ferry. So like,
it's only 3.2 miles.
Yeah, I think it's used to spending. Yeah, ferries are slow. So we got ferries in Houston going from Galveston Island to Port Arthur, I think it is.
What was the purpose of the bridge, anyways? What were the people of Ketchikan hoping to achieve?
To not have to ferry for 30 minutes.
Having access to the rest of the state without staying on the ferry.
Are you sure about all that? Just the ferry? They were hoping that it would help open Gravina Island to development.
It was all political bullshit.
Well, they were hoping to stay off.
I don't think they want to develop any of that land. I mean, they already spent $28 million on it.
The purpose of the bridge is to avoid the ferry and to open the land to development.
International cargo. There's a difference. That international cargo would not have been going across that bridge. Because the international cargo that funds the Ketchikan airport gets broken up and redistributed. Like if it's coming from Asia by air cargo, it gets broken up and redistributed on other planes to other parts of the country. It's an actual international cargo airport. So it makes it less congested, more cost-effective stop than stopping in Anchorage when Anchorage gets more severe weather than Ketchikan. It's an extra added hour flight time to get to Ketchikan to where they can unload and disperse there, as opposed to Anchorage where they can be stuck in the air during the winter for an hour or 2 hours because of de-icing holds. So they're going to be in that air that time anyways and get to go down to Ketchikan where the temperatures aren't as extreme. Like I see a point of the airport. I don't see a point of the bridge.
How much money is being spent on the 3.2 mile road that's already been built to maintain it? Because it's been there for 10 years.
Oh, no clue.
I figured that.
I assumed you had the answer.
But no, I don't. But
sorry, just looking at a map.
Wants to have a bridge, and the state wants to maintain a bridge, then that's the state's choice.
Sorry, just looking at a map of Alaska and who owns Alaska, and less than 1% is privately owned of Alaska. Everything else is federal, state, and native.
Well, who
We could
owns
do
the
a whole
baby?
show on the Alaska Native corporations too.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Yeah, no reservations in Alaska.
That's weird.
So I mean, it's a beautiful place, but the bridge would never be paid for ever.
No, I disagree. Once the land was developed.
The land's never going to develop. That's the point.
Well, not with no access to it. Yeah, you're right.
Even if they had access, it's never going to develop enough to pay for a $500 million project.
If the federal government and the judicial system got out of the way, it would eventually. But that's a debate for another show.
So, top 13 things to do in Ketchikan. Take to the skies.
No,
Snorkel in the
getting
tide
ferry.
pools.
Well, we are so far off.
Get lessons at the
Check out
Discovery
that
Center.
3.2 mile road that they made.
I'd say, considering the way most of Alaska is, probably 10% of that road gets replaced every year after frost, because the frost heaves are not a joke in Alaska.
Which means they probably know how to build bridges in Alaska for Alaska.
Frost heaves haven't been a huge issue up in Anchorage lately. It's been potholes.
Oh,
They've really
the
learned how to lay a road.
That collapses.
They've really learned how to lay a road that it doesn't frost heave as much if they do it right with all the studies they did at UAF. But the potholes are just a major issue. They have been forever.
All I know is I remember hitting a frost heave going up to Fairbanks from Anchorage and getting airborne.
Oh, dude, I did that coming up from Washington up to Alaska, taking the Alcan, and it's smooth sailing until you get right near the Alaskan border, and then all of a sudden, two massive frost heaves, and it was just like going 60 miles an hour. Didn't see it coming along. All of a sudden, whoo, right into the air. Oh, that was crazy. But that was like 25 years ago, 27 years ago.
All right. Well, we've been going a long time on this. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. So I think we all have a lot of ways we can trim the pork, but I think we're definitely in agreement on at least one part. It's spending money.
Amen.
So, Brad, you got any final thoughts you want to put in?
No, I just think that we need to stop spending, quit giving money away, especially to other countries when we're not focusing on our own. I think Ukraine I'm okay with sending money and aid to Ukraine, but not while we're sending it to these other countries that don't do dick all to help us.
And that we're sooner or later going to end up fighting anyways because they have tyrannical governments.
Well, yeah. And, I'm just glad we're not giving Russia any help, but I guess.
Oh, we gave them billions after the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but still. Yeah, we just need to stop spending. And, when someone's doing their closing comments, don't interrupt them. And other than that, I think we're pretty good.
That's why I stayed quiet.
So, anyways, we just got to stop spending and teach our kids, that what we're doing now, they're going to have to pay for it. So they need to be fiscally responsible. And so does our government. And we need to have our kids hold our government account for what they're doing now. So I'm not saying go be a bunch of little Greta Thunbergs, but
amen.
How dare you spend all my money to save the freaking spotted owl, So, anyways, that's where I stand. Like I said, I'm a little retarded when it comes to the debt and economy, and that's my own deal. But
all right, Brian, what are your final comments?
I think the fact is the U.S. is facing many, many, many major issues that are hindering and stunting its future. And national debt is one huge one that we could get under control, but most likely we're not. It's just The number is shooting up. It's like we talked about it. It seemed like for 10, 20 years, we talked about it almost every day. National debt, national debt. We're going into major national debt that we're passing on to our kids, our grandkids, our great grandkids. And then all of a sudden, over the last 2, 3 years, it's like we just stopped talking about it. Nobody wants to talk about it anymore. As we have these massive bailout bills, spending bills on all different issues, where national debt is a huge issue. And I think is a convention of states an answer to fixing the problem? Oh, I don't know. But rather than tearing down the country and starting over from scratch, I would be an option for me rather than just starting over. We need to get this under control. People need to stop spending money that we don't have. We should have some kind of something in there that says you bring in the money, whatever money you bring in, you can spend to a point, and you put some of that aside for the future instead of spending money you don't have. National debt has to get under control. It's going to destroy this country. It's just insane.
Can I say one more thing?
Donkey show.
So just no, just since we started
Nuclear Armageddon.
So just since we started, we've been talking for about an hour and 40 minutes, an hour and 35 minutes. Just since we started talking, we have gone up over $150 million in debt just as we were talking. So that ought to put a little bit of.
Yep, because the interest on that $30 trillion is racking up fast.
That's how poor, that's how bad at spending we are, or rather, I guess, good.
Yeah, and my only comment for final comment, all we need to do is seriously just balanced budget amendment. It needs to be an amendment that the Congress cannot override. And it should actually have dictated in there like at least a 5%, if not 10% surplus. So anyways, good show. We went off the rails.
Wait a minute. One more thing. Sorry. It's not going to be a Burrow show. We shouldn't be giving Congress raises and expecting our military to not be able to deal with inflation and tell them to go on food stamps. That is one thing that is completely unacceptable. If anybody needs to go on food stamps, it should be the congressmen and the senators and the presidents that should be on food stamps, not our soldiers.
We've talked about that a little bit in the past.
Next show should actually be on limitations of Congress that need to be implemented.
Yeah, we've talked about that in the past, and that they were never intended to be career politicians, so they shouldn't be making enough to have a career on.
So, but that should be another show. We've already been on an hour and a half.
The matter is, our soldiers do not need to be food stamps.
That's ridiculous.
Amen.
Raises to combat inflation.
Amen.
The soldiers should. That's all I have left to say.
Okay.
All right, you guys have a good night. I'll do our after call in a minute. I've got a call that's been coming in, an urgent call. I'll make that and I'll call you guys right back. Anyways, thanks revelers for listening. I don't know what the exact status is on our monetization. I know we were only 8 away on the last show, so
we set up donations to Stripes.
Yeah, so you can actually support us directly through Spotify, through the subscription sponsoring. We do appreciate you guys listening, and I'm still working on the website. I should be able to launch it by next week. That'll have some cool gear for you guys too. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to give us 5 stars, share us with your friends so we can grow our listenership. And thanks as always for joining us. And guys, thanks for a nice heated conversation.
Good night.
Peace.